So you want to know the best high yield savings account out there today. Let's have a little talk. Hey, I'm Tess, wealth and mindset coach and founder of wanderwealthy.com. Today, we're going to be talking about high yield savings accounts, what they are, is there a catch to them, how to best use them, and even answer how to find the best one for you. And you might be thinking right off the bat, well, it's a high yield savings account. I should look for the bank account that's offering the highest interest rate for the account. In some ways, that can be helpful, but I will say that that's not the only thing you should be looking for, and it's even really hard to do that in this state and environment that we're in. If you've been watching the news or you've gotten an email from your bank, I've gotten a couple emails from a couple of the different banks that I've been using and, testing the waters with, then you know the interest rates are kind of in this state of decline perhaps, and it can feel really discouraging to your saving strategy, I'm sure. But it's not the only thing, and it's definitely not the most important thing to consider when picking a bank account, and that's what I want to talk about. So in this video, you're not going to get the stack up of best bank accounts that are providing you with the best interest rate available, because honestly, there's so many videos on the internet and on YouTube about that, but like 6 months ago, the rates were above 2% and now they're below. So they just change, and the banks that are competing with each other, that changes as well. So it changes so rapidly, but changing your bank that rapidly isn't an effective saving strategy. What you want to be more focused on is just your ability to save in the way that you want to, and that's definitely what I look at when I'm looking at a high yield savings account to bank with. Now I want to address a couple of things before we talk about, what to look for so that you can pick the best high yield savings account for yourself. First is this changing interest rate environment. What is happening is that the federal funds rate has changed. The federal funds rate is a rate set by the Federal Reserve, aka the Fed, and they are changing the rate because they're just trying to allow America's economy to not go out the window. They adjust this rate to help combat any sort of drastic inflation or deflation that could happen, and that's essentially their job. Now, this federal funds rate is the interest rate that banks use to borrow and lend money to other banks and other financial institutions. So it is a really important rate because it essentially impacts what the bank can then provide to us as the average everyday consumers. So if the federal funds rate declines, then eventually the bank's interest rate is probably going to decline too. We're not quite at the level of interest even on high yield accounts that we were at back in even 2013, maybe even 2014, but we're starting to see a trend in that direction. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, I just am saying we've seen a decline in rates from 2.2-ish% in June to now about 1.789%. Now this is with high yield savings accounts, and I want to explain the difference between a high yield savings account and a traditional savings account. The difference is that a high yield savings account provides a higher interest rate. A lot of people will write that you got to be aware of the high yield savings account because there's a catch, and sure, there can be with some banks, but you can also find banks that offer high yield savings accounts that aren't going to charge any sort of additional fees that would essentially offset the additional money you'll be making on your savings from what you would be making in a traditional savings account that doesn't charge you any fees. There's also a ton of traditional savings accounts that also charge fees, so that's annoying in and of itself. High yield savings accounts provide higher rates, and a lot of them are online savings accounts and online banks in general. And the reason they're able to provide these higher rates is essentially they're passing down the cost savings of not having a ton of different brick and mortar banks and bank tellers in all over the US. They can pass those savings down to their customers in the form of an interest rate. Again, there could be a catch depending on the high yield savings account that you're looking at, and that's why we're going to talk about what to look for so you can pick the best high yield savings account for yourself, whether you're saving for an emergency fund, a vacation fund, a down payment on a home, or whatever it might be. And with that, just to say, there can be a catch, but for the most part, there is no catch There's a lot of great high yield savings accounts that are even more competitive in the form of fees that they don't charge, minimum balances they don't require, and other great flexibility components that traditional banks or traditional savings accounts, I should say, can't provide. Let's talk about how to find the best high yield savings account for you. What I think you should consider is what you're saving for. If you're trying to save for a short-term goal, I consider short-term goals to be 3 years or less, then you definitely want to be saving into a savings account. But if you have this strategy of saving but then spending and saving and spending and doing it multiple times within a month, you actually might be better suited for a checking account, and in which that's not really saving, it's just spending your money. A savings account is perfect for things like emergency savings or a vacation fund because you know you're going to travel pretty regularly, either every year or a couple times a year. I also like to use a savings account for the holiday time as well as weddings that I'm attending throughout any given year. And I also have savings for medium term, but more closer to short term, big purchases that I plan to make. Maybe I have a home renovation, or I want to replace some things like get a new bookcase in my home and I want to save up for that. Or maybe I want to buy a rental property and save up for a down payment within the next 2 years, or buy a car in cash and save up for that. Whatever it is, a savings account is perfectly suited because it has the security of FDIC insurance. And that's the first thing you want to look for when you're looking at high yield savings accounts, is that they are FDIC insured, because there are companies that try to get away with not having that. FDIC insurance in the US is insurance against the money that you have put in the bank. They'll insure up to a certain amount so that if anything crazy would happen, you are still able to get usually up to $250,000. That's the general law of FDIC insurance. So that's the first thing I would look for. The other thing is, I think most of us have multiple savings goals. So I'd like to be able to access multiple savings accounts within one bank. Having it all in one place is really prime for me. And additional things that are nice, actually something that's really required, is that if you're going to have one savings account or many savings accounts, you don't want to have to pay monthly fees, whether they're in the form of maintenance fees or whatever way that these people can pack fees into. And I also don't want to have any sort of minimum balance requirements, either to open the account or to just be able to keep having that account. Maybe I save up for the furniture in my house and then I spend it, and then I want to save up again for another piece of furniture later down the road. I don't want to get hit with fees if my balance ends up going to zero and then gets built back up again eventually. There are a bunch of online savings accounts and high yield savings accounts that offer the ability to have the account without any monthly fees as long as you maintain some sort of balance, and that can work. I just don't like managing that kind of, additional thing to think about. So I usually look for a bank that doesn't have that requirement. Another thing that is really important to me is that I can bank online, and they have a really great user experience and easy to use mobile app as well as desktop app. I live in Italy half the year and I travel for a couple of months every year, and being able to access my money is really important to me, and being able to access it in a way that doesn't give me a headache is also very important to me. In addition, I'll randomly, need to cash checks, and a lot of people wonder, how do you do that if you have an online bank? And so you obviously want to be able to cash your checks still, and with a lot of online banks, they offer the ability to cash checks via the mobile app. There are some high yield savings accounts that aren't online banks that don't offer this accessibility. The other thing that's really important to me in my bank in general is that I can have a bunch of different accounts. I can send the money to my checking account when I actually am going to pay for that emergency or buy that couch, and I can use my debit or my credit card that's connected to that checking account. And going one step further, I like to have a debit card for that account, and I like to use that debit card to get cash, and I don't like to pay more fees to access more of my money. So having a bank that offers the ability to be reimbursed for any fees that I might be charging, especially because I'm only getting money maybe once or twice a month, so it's not like I'm going crazy busy, so I can deal with some limitations there. But as long as I can get reimbursed at least twice a month, I'm pretty good, and I'm pretty happy. There's a bunch more strategies that I use to save my money, and they're so much more effective than relying on a small percentage of interest that I might be making on the money I have saved. Yes, it's a bonus, it's awesome to have in addition, but it's not the thing that I'm relying to like get me to my savings goals. I'd rather be able to make contributions or automatic transfers on a regular basis, knowing that I'm saving as much as I can, and be able to budget my money easily, know how much I can actually spend so that I'm saving most of my money and spending as little as possible. Or if I do spend, I've saved up for that. I map out all of my 7 additional saving strategies that go above and beyond and are potentially more effective than just relying on the interest rate in your account in a video that I was able to collaborate with Ally Bank on. You can go check it out by clicking the link in the description box below and get to know all of the other criteria that I have, some I've already mentioned here, and additional things that are really going to make more of an impact on you as you save towards various goals than just relying on the interest rate. And so that's why I made this video, and I didn't want to just compare a bunch of banks, because although yes, it's nice to have your online high yield savings account, whatever it is, maybe it's not online, whatever, but it's nice to have your savings account, you know, competing with the big boys, but you're starting to split hairs when you start worrying about which one's going to offer the highest and best, because at the end of the day, they're all impacted by a rate that they can't even control, and they're probably going to trade places every now and then by incremental percentage basis points. I'll show you a little example of where the rates are now and how there's a small gap, you know, 0.1 to 0.2% gap, but at the end of the day, you know, your savings is really to save money that you plan to spend within the next couple years. So making 0.2% more on your savings isn't going to get you across the finish line of the goal that you're saving for. If you're looking to really ramp up your savings, maybe you've already hit your emergency fund and you're saving regularly for other things that you happen to spend that are higher ticket items within the next year or two, then I invite you to start thinking about getting into the investment world. Any money that you have in excess is going to be greatly used when you put it into investments, as opposed to hoping your savings account is going to help you retire with $1 million someday. Saving your way to $1 million is way harder than investing your way to $1 million. If investing feels a little scary or anxiety inducing to you, I totally understand. It's a complex topic, but I break it down in a lot of videos I have on my channel, as well as a free 10-day email course that you can get access to by going to wanderwealthy.com/invest. Investing is a great way to take your money to the next level, but you also have to have a good foundation of savings already in gear. So use this video to learn about what you should be looking for when it comes to finding the best high yield savings account or online savings account for you. And also make sure you check out my 7 additional saving strategies that I share over on Ally's website. Again, I will link it in the description box below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I'm super glad to be making this slow return to YouTube. And for all of you who've been subscribed for such a long time, thank you. You are amazing. I love you guys. And until next time, I hope you wander wealthy. Bye.